Hi, I'm Chris McCoy, and welcome to the Memphis Flyer podcast. Every week we hop on here to tell you what's in the newspaper this week, what's going on in Memphis, and this week is our spring arts guide. So, like I said, one of the things that we do really well is tell you what's going on in Memphis, and the spring arts guide is going to get you there for 3 months. Highlights of theater, highlights of art exhibits in town, highlights of some of the bigger music shows, highlights of ballet and dance. It's the arts, man. Art exhibits, lots of those too. So check those out. There was a lot of really interesting stuff when I was just flipping through it this morning that I'm going to put on my calendar, and I encourage y'all to do the same. So we're going to have a guest here in just a minute, but first I'm going to tell you about what I wrote about this week. I did a little Oscar recap. The Oscars were on Sunday, and Honora set a record, 4 Oscars for a single person, Sean Baker. Never been done before. The last time anybody won 4 Oscars on one night was Walt Disney, and he won for 3 shorts and a feature documentary. This is all one movie because Sean Baker wrote, directed, produced, and also edited the whole thing himself. Honora is an amazing film. I think everybody should watch it. It's like Pretty Woman in a way. It's a screwball comedy in a way. It's a really sad tragedy in a way. And it's all about really very relevant and about our current moment because it's about oligarchy and what happens when a few people have way too much money and power, and the people who get ground under their heel. And Mikey Madison, who was the fifth Oscar, she won for Best Actress, she's a revelation in this. And so I encourage everybody to go see it. That is going to be at Ridgeway this week for an encore performance. So you actually get a chance to see it in theaters with people, which I highly, highly recommend. It plays really well in the room. So you should check that out. There were a couple of other first times at the Oscars as well. The first time a Palestinian film has ever won for No Other Land, which is a joint documentary between a Palestinian journalist and an Israeli journalist about violence in the West Bank, settler violence in the West Bank, and how they're throwing people out of their homes there and have been for years. And they do not have a distribution company. Nobody would touch them in America. They're self-distributing. They're basically they're doing what's called four-wall on it. They're renting out individual theaters. It's not playing in Memphis. You can't find it on streaming unless you mess with your VPN, which I certainly could not condone. But if you feel like doing it and want to do it, you can probably find it online that way. But we don't condone that. But you could. But the film that I watched and reviewed this week was called Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. And it was another Oscar-nominated documentary that did not win the Oscar, but it tells the story of what's called the Congo crisis, and that happened in 1959, 1960, when as the European colonies were breaking up, there were a lot of new countries that sprang up here and there, and one of them, and especially a lot in Central Africa, which had formerly been Belgian colonies. And when the Congo became just Congo, and they declared their independence, there was a guy named Patrice Lumumba who they voted as their president, and he just happened to be in a Belgian jail for inciting an anti-colonial riot at the time. So meanwhile, while all this is going on, the Soviet Union, the Second World, and the Western Bloc, the United States, the First World, were competing for the alignment of these countries, these newly decolonialized countries, which became known as the Third World. So you probably heard the Third World before, but didn't know what the first and second were, if you were like me. But this is what it was. And they, so they were trying to convince, as these new countries came online, these two blocks of power were trying to convince them to align with them. And one of the ways the Americans did it was they made Louis Armstrong, the jazz trumpeter and father of American pop music, in my book, like, he became the goodwill ambassador, and they sent him on different tours in the Congo and in Central Africa. And the African people at that time were absolutely hungry for American music, and they ate it up. There's a scene where Armstrong gets out of the plane in I think it's Kinshasa, and there's like 10,000 people there to meet him with a marching band. So he like gets at the front of the marching band and plays a show just off the plane with this marching band to like thousands and thousands of people who are just hanging out in the street. And it's an absolutely remarkable scene. And there's a ton of great music in this because the director like really interweaves. That's the whole point. Like, there's this really heavy geopolitical stuff going on, and then there's this amazing music going on at the same time. And there's all these incredible little points and subplots that happen during all this intrigue. The CIA was using Louis Armstrong's tours as a front, and Louis Armstrong figured out that he was getting used and threatened to immigrate to Ghana at one point. And Max Roach, the jazz drummer, led a riot in the UN Security Council in 1960 at one point. It is an amazing story. It's currently on Apple TV and Amazon Prime. You can get it there. And it's a little long and there's a lot of detail, but the music is just absolutely incredible, and I highly recommend it. If that sounds like your bag, I can understand how like jazz and international intrigue like might turn some folks off, and that's fine. You can do that. You can be like that. I don't care. But if it sounds like something that you want to listen to, want to watch, then, I highly recommend it. So now we're going to have some guests. So usually when Alex Greene over here is on the podcast, he is here as in his capacity as a music writer for the Memphis Flyer. But today, no, he is an actual guest. We're here with Kip Ulhorn and Alex Greene of Cloudland Canyon. And on Thursday, that would be March 6th.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I did that with my mind. March 6th, they're going to be performing a live score to a series of short films by Stan Brackhage, who is an American documentary filmmaker from the 60s. And they are going to get up there and do that tightrope walk and put his images to music. Kip, Alex, thank you so much for taking some time.
Yeah.
Kip, can you tell us a little bit about where Cloudland Canyon came from and how long you've been doing this?
God, so long. Like since 2002. But it's this most recent like incarnation, like 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I took like 5 or so years off and didn't know if I was going to start back after my son was born.
Mm-hmm.
So and then Alex would come over like during the pandemic and kind of help me figure out what I was doing with a new record that we finally kind of completed after, I don't know, like 2 years or something.
Took a while.
I don't know. It always takes me forever. But yeah, so probably since 2021 or 22.
Yeah. And Alex, so are you playing guitar in this project?
I often do with the band.
Yeah. It's a keyboard band. Let's put that, that up front.
Yeah.
And you're usually a keyboard player. Or
Right.
Yeah.
But I play a mean rhythm guitar, as does Kip, actually. And we both played a lot of guitar on the album that we worked on together, which is just called Cloudland Canyon, even though it's like your 8th album
Yeah.
or something.
It is my old friend Ted from Bagel Radio, who's a DJ in New York. He always has the non-debut self-titled album that does not suck, which is a very rare bird. And I think this record is one of those because I love this album. When
Thank you,
that
man.
album came out, I listened to it like nonstop.
That's so awesome.
Right.
You know.
Because I was talking about this the other day, but like I never hear albums anymore that I want to listen to start to finish. So that's like high praise.
No,
For sure.
I absolutely did.
Yeah.
Absolutely did. And of
That's
course,
awesome.
my theme song is Bad Decision in my personal life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you all are doing this live score at Crosstown. So my band 1,000 Lights did a live score back in 2019 at Crosstown. We did Haxon, and oh my God, it is a lot of work and it's absolutely terrifying. So
Yeah.
why in
Yeah.
the world would you do that to yourself?
Yeah. Did you guys work on that together?
No, I
Okay.
did another
Okay.
live score for Haxon
Yeah.
Okay.
with my
It-
group.
That makes
See,
sense.
we've both done Haxon at different
Yeah.
times and completely different vibes.
Yeah.
You know, completely different vibes. And this one is going to be because my Haxon with 1,000 Lights was like goth rock,
Yeah.
and your Haxon was like free jazz and well, more of a traditional soundtrack or score. I feel
Yeah, yeah,
for sure with the Rolling Head Orchestra.
yeah.
And now, but this is something completely different.
Yeah. This is like a next level insanity.
So why Stan Brackage's films?
Like I don't know, like me and the guy that I started Cloudland with just really always loved his aesthetic. Like his films are so like inventive, especially for that time. Like, you know, he would like scratch or paint directly onto film, which is really cool. Honestly, we used to just get stoned and watch like a VHS copy of all of his films like late at night.
So this is pretty deep. This is pretty deep in the Cloudland Canyon lore.
Yeah.
Like he's sort of been here from the beginning.
I
right?
think I was telling Corbin that like when we had a MySpace page, just to really put a period on this, I think like our tagline was Baraka and Brackhage. That was like our impetus for the band or something. I don't know if you guys have seen Baraka, but it's similar to Koyaanisqatsi.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Jeffrey Reggio.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I'm a huge fan of Koyaanisqatsi and
Yeah.
and Philip Glass, especially Koyaanisqatsi though. I did a Never Seen It, one of my columns that I do a couple years ago with Josh Cannon.
Okay.
who when the slow cinema thing was getting really
Yeah.
big and he was really into it. I was like, you want to see some slow cinema?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Koyaanisqatsi.
Yeah.
That's
Somehow
slow cinema.
like it's really I feel like it's really interesting like how it's really interesting how interesting it stays regardless of the fact that it's all I mean there's like still a narrative even though it's not spoken, like you can kind of very quickly get the picture of what it's about.
Yeah, Josh, when we did that, Josh was like, I was like 10 minutes in and I was like, is this like the credit sequence? And then at 15 minutes, he was like, oh, it's all like this. Because Koyaanisqatsi, no dialogue at all. It's all
Yeah. I think it comes from like a Hopi Indian word for
meaning life out of balance.
Yeah.
That's what it means. And it's a sort of it was made in 83
yeah.
with basically with Star Wars money.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I
because
guess I didn't know
Lucas,
that.
well, Jeffrey Reggio was in with that group, which was Lucas and Coppola and
Oh, right.
that bunch.
Yeah.
And then they were all successful, and he sort of wasn't, and he got Coppola to bankroll him, and they got
That's so
they
cool.
got these. They were the first people to use like the motion control cameras. Which they used in like Star Wars to do the special effects. They would do, different passes, but the camera move always had to be the same.
Okay.
So they got that stuff and they put it outside and did time lapse with it outside, and nobody
Yeah.
had ever done that before.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's one of the things about that film. But we're not talking about that film right now.
Well, I mean, it factors in there somewhere.
Well,
Not-
without Brackhage, you might say Koyaanisqatsi may not
doesn't
have ever
happen.
existed.
Yeah.
I mean, he pioneered that more kind of Zen approach to both filmmaking and film viewing, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, it's always interesting when like someone's working in like I mean, not that he was like in isolation, but just you kind of wonder with like certain things, like even like the Velvet Underground or something, like how exactly they got to that with no real precursor. Although I'm sure Brackhage has a precursor, but
Yeah, like Louis Burnell probably. If you go back
Yeah.
far enough, you can find it. You can always find something,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Well, so how is this experience? So, okay, how many films are you doing?
Man, that's a good question.
Because he did all shorts, right?
Yeah. I know it's 12 songs.
I
So
think it's about a dozen.
Yeah. So Corbin, that also plays synth, he made a reel of just like, I think it is era specific. So it starts with like 60s and 70s, and then kind of does, I think it does 80s through 2000, and then maybe right following 2000. I think I'm not sure. Do you know when he died?
Early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And I think we're including the last short he made.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the story about? He was basically on his deathbed.
Yeah. And he was like, he was scratching stuff into I can't remember exactly how
He was scratching onto the negatives.
Yeah.
And as he did on many of his films, and he was doing that on his deathbed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that really informed our approach musically. We wanted something to kind of convey the majesty of that moment. Not the tragedy and the glory of it. Him living his art. Right up to the last minute.
It's funny, like I remember you guys. That was interesting because you guys were like, "No, it's like a really uplifting," and I was like, "This is a bummer." but no, it works. Yeah, but it works better as like triumphant kind of return or something.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, so how's the experience been? That's a lot of music to write.
Mm-hmm.
How long is it taking you to do it?
We didn't have as long as I think we probably started in like November maybe. So we were doing like another score, and then kind of had to figure out how this was going to work. So a lot of new equipment was purchased to make it easier. And then, so I guess Corbin and Alex and I wrote most of it, just like recording into the computer at my house. Mm-hmm. And then once we were done with that, had to figure out like how to piece it out so that like, just dividing up duties to recreate it, which is sometimes fun, sometimes a nightmare. But yeah.
Well, speaking of that, my duty has actually not been to play guitar.
Yeah, that's true.
In this iteration of Cloudland Canyon, I have been orchestrating for a 7-piece ensemble of classical players from the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, who will be joining us. And I think that's what really pushes this evening of music, into something you rarely see, which is this kind of electronica, psychedelic rock band paired with classical players. And I was starting on orchestrations as early as December.
Yeah.
And that was part of the challenge too, melding the scores I would write in scoring software with the electronic component.
Yeah.
That has yielded some very interesting results. I think people are going to be pretty amazed.
That's exciting.
Yeah, there's some like orchestral versions of like older songs that we had just from like, I think that, how many did we do? Like 2 that are kind of like reminiscent or like deconstructed versions of old stuff we had.
Remixes.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
It's the dance remix.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, yeah. With an orchestra. The way we just described it, it sounds like yes, pretty much. Which I mean isn't a bad thing necessarily. I'm just
I don't see you sounding like yes.
No, but the having members of the symphony play with us is like, it's something I've always wanted to do.
Have you ever done anything like that before?
No. Well, I played in a guitar orchestra with Reese Chatham a long time ago, but that's probably the closest thing.
Yeah. Well, y'all, this is exciting. This is going to be on Thursday night, March 6th at Crosstown. And if you can't be there, or if you're listening to this after this, stay tuned, and we're going to have a little clip, a little demo to show you what you're missing. Do you think this is going to live beyond this performance?
Yeah. If Daniel will record it for us, multi-track, it will definitely.
And you should. We got a record out of 1,000 Lights. Got a record out of our.
Did you really?
Yeah, we did.
That's awesome.
We released it ourselves and made money on it.
Yeah.
So y'all should definitely do that. Oh, it's great. And,
Yeah.
and you know the energy in the room really brings a lot to it too.
Yeah.
As Thomas Corbin, who plays with y'all, was also in General Labor, and they did Adventures of Prince Ahmed a couple years ago.
That was amazing.
And when I was interviewing him for that, he was like, I don't know, man. Like, we've never made it all the way through this. Like, man. And I was like, well, the good news is on the night of, you're going to make it all the way through, one way or the other. It's going to begin and end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And they got an album out of that.
They got an album out of that,
very
too.
fine album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It came out on cassette, which is cool.
yeah. So here we are. Check this out. This is Cloudland Canyon. A little sample of what you're going to hear, or what you would have heard, on March 6th at Crosstown. Cloudland Canyon takes on the films of Stan Brackhage.